My guest at this time is Andy Roth. He's the Vice President of Government Affairs at the Club for Growth. Andy is among a number of fiscal conservatives greatly disappointed with the contents of the new Farm Bill passed through a Republican House and a Republican Senate. And Andy, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
The premise of the Farm Bill is to provide subsidies for farmers and set parameters for food assistance programs and any conditions to qualify for them, like work requirements and so forth. How did the Republicans do on that front?
It was pretty ugly. In fact, it was so ugly that after the Senate voted and after the House voted, I went home just extremely angry, and I thought that after a good night's sleep, I'd feel a little bit better. But I woke up and I was still just fit to be tied because this bill was so egregious. And what's remarkable about it is that liberals and conservatives hated the bill. You had editorial boards on both sides of the aisle condemning this bill. But lawmakers in Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, were more beholden to special interests than to taxpayers. This was a bill that really didn't have a score, meaning they just learned about how much it would cost right before the Senate voted. And even then, the scorekeepers at the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, they said they still weren't done counting. So Congress rushed this bill through in a lame duck Congress, mind you, without even knowing the full ramifications of the bill. And what it does is it spends a lot of money on subsidies to wealthy farmers who make far more than the average American household. And then it also hands out food stamps without any work requirements or without any sort of screws to tighten down on abuse and fraud. So when you combine those two things, it was almost $1 trillion worth of just absolute ugliness. And unfortunately, I think Trump is going to sign it into law, and we're going to have 5 years of this madness before we come up with another bill.
What explanation did Republicans give for supporting this?
Well, that's the thing. And let me say, Speaker Ryan has a reputation of being a fiscal hawk, of being a real policy wonk. And he is really going out the door on a horrible note. In fact, it's really sad because when he put out this conference report, he talked about how it was going to provide certainty and security for farmers and food stamp recipients, but he said nothing about the price tag or how egregious and how wrong it was that the bill, the components that the bill had. The Farm Bill was created during the Great Depression, obviously during the Dust Bowl era, and the reason why is because FDR and the Democrats wanted to provide assistance to farmers who made far less than the median income. And now you're seeing the exact opposite, is where small and family farms are being left out, and wealthy farmers who can make up to $900,000. They're the ones that are reaping most of the benefits. In fact, Chuck Grassley, a Republican senator from Iowa, which is right in the middle of corn country, he voted against the Farm Bill on principle, saying that this left the small farmer out. So it was a horribly misguided bill. Republicans and Democrats both support it. And frankly, I think they did it because they listened to special interests and because it's the lame duck and they're anxious to go home and they're not caring about the taxpayer.
We're talking to Andy Roth of the Club for Growth. And Andy, let's dig down in a couple different ways. First of all, how does this Farm Bill compare to the last one or the last few? Is it obviously more egregious than the others?
That's an excellent question. The last Farm Bill was a real fight. And you had conservative groups like the Club for Growth and Heritage Action and a lot of the think tanks. They demanded that Congress split the bill up because ag subsidies are not popular among urban lawmakers. And food stamps are not popular among rural lawmakers. So if each of those programs stood alone as a standalone bill, they would likely fail. And that's the unholy marriage of the Farm Bill, is that they combine two bad bills into a bill that is assured to pass. And so the last Farm Bill, we demanded that they split up the bill, and we were successful. We were able to do that in the House. But the Senate put the two bills back together again like Humpty Dumpty and passed it. So it was a defeat, but conservatives were able to, for the first time in history, make a stand and split those up. This time around, there was no voice in Congress to do that. There was nobody saying split the bill up. The outside groups were doing it, but there was nothing in Congress. And so there was just a complete level of apathy among Republicans and Democrats to do anything about the reforms. And it's just absolutely sad.
Andy, I've heard some other conservatives suggesting that the original House bill was at least much better than the final version, if not some pretty decent progress in certain areas, maybe even including work requirements. What's your take on that?
That's exactly right. They were very modest reforms, but House Republicans paid just a tiny bit of lip service to work requirements. There was, out of a $900 billion bill, I think that there was like $7 or $8 billion worth of savings through work requirements. The House passed that version. I think it was still a bad bill, but they passed that version, and then the Senate immediately got rid of it and then made it worse. The farm bill that passed the Senate allows farmers' extended family, so cousins, nephews, and nieces, to be eligible for farm subsidies, and they don't even have to be on the farm to receive that money. So it's like theft right before our eyes. It's really horrible.
Andy, give our listeners an idea of what you think an ideal farm bill would look like. A, should there be one at all? And secondly, what should a price tag look like, and what type of components, whether it's work requirements or other things, should be high priorities?
Well, if I had my druthers, I would say that there should be no farm bill at all. I think that it's worth some time to publicly debate the merits of the 10th Amendment, and I think it's time to get back to federalism. If Iowa or Nebraska or Kansas or some other farm state deems that it's necessary to assist their farmers, then they should feel free to create an assistance program to help them out. But people in California or Florida or New Hampshire shouldn't have to pay for that. Likewise, if a state wants to provide food stamp assistance, then they should do so. It's the 10th Amendment is a brilliant addition to the Bill of Rights because it says the states can try things out. And you've heard the saying that the 50 states are like 50 laboratories for democracy. Well, let them try. Let them see what works and what doesn't work. But leave the federal government out of it.
And lastly, I want to go back to the point you made about Senator Grassley and his concern over smaller farmers who you contend are left out here. Explain what's in here for them and what's not, and what condition that leaves them in.
Yeah, well, so the Farm Bill, the agricultural subsidies, first of all, it's called Title I, which are the row crops. So rice, corn, wheat, cotton, and soybeans. If you grow those, you are eligible for subsidies. But the largest portion of subsidies go to agribusinesses. So these are large corporations that receive that money. Family farms do not get the lion's share or even a modest amount of subsidies out of this. And that's the unfortunate thing. The Farm Bill also has some conservation programs and some other silly things that waste money at the taxpayer's expense. So it's just you even have liberal editorial boards that are saying this is a completely misguided program. This does not help out the small farms. Plus, if you do not grow one of those 5 crops, you don't get any subsidies at all. So if you grow avocados or asparagus or apples, you don't get any subsidies. And the argument for the Farm Bill is that farmers incur risks that are just out of their control, like the weather and precipitation. But that argument should extend to fruit and vegetable growers, but they don't get any subsidies. So the whole thing is misguided, and it's all led by special interests.
Do the agribusinesses need the subsidies?
No, of course not. You are eligible for a subsidy if you make up to $900,000 in personal income. So a lot of these corporations, in fact, one organization, and I'm blanking on their name, but they were able to identify 20,000 recipients of farm subsidies who don't even live in a farm or live on a farm. They found recipients who live in downtown Manhattan or in Chicago, Illinois. And that's all because they are incorporated as a large business, and that the person that receives that probably wears a suit and tie to work. So it's really unfortunate how bad this is.
Well, it's a maddening debate for a lot of people, obviously yourself included, and we'll see if anything improves. I know it's going to be a while before the next Farm Bill debate, but we'll see. Andy, thanks very much for your time today. We greatly appreciate it. Andy Roth is Vice President of Government Affairs at the Club for Growth. I'm Greg Columbus reporting for Radio America.